What is going on, guys? It's Modded Warfare here. Welcome back to another PS4 discussion video. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing all of the new kind of jailbreak rumors, the PS4 jailbreak rumors that are circulating around the PS4 scene at the moment. There's quite a lot of, speculation and rumors that have been circulating for months now, and people have been asking me to make a video covering this stuff for quite some time. So yeah, I'm finally going to do it. But just to be clear, I don't have any kind of insider information on any of this stuff. This is just going to be me adding my own, commentary, speculation, opinions to the mix. So, take everything with major grains of salt, as you should, because I'm just giving you guys my take on the whole situation. But first, we actually have a sponsor for today's video, Ridge Wallet. Ridge Wallet is a uniquely designed compact wallet with RFID blocking inner plates that can hold up to 12 cards. Plus, they come with either a cash strap or a money clip that you can use for your banknotes. So far, I've only had mine for a few days, but I love how small and compact it is. Gets rid of that awful wallet bulge and trying to get your wallet in and out of tight pockets. So it's definitely a keeper for me. Plus, it comes with a lifetime warranty, and in the unlikely event that you don't like it, there are free returns. They have many different designs. The one I have here is the black aluminium design, and if the wallet's not to your taste, they have many other great products like rucksacks, phone cases, and more. And if you use the link ridge.com/modded and enter the code modded at the checkout, you can save yourself 10% off your purchase. So click the link in the pinned comments underneath this video. It helps support the channel and you get a great product in the process. So thanks to Ridge Wallet for sponsoring this video. So to start off, this whole 6.20 rumors, this all came from somebody called the Flow Zero on Twitter. So he comes along here and he says, somebody want to donate me a 6.20 firmware PS4. Like, okay, interesting. And then he says, also don't update past 6.20 if you want a kernel exploit. It's like, okay, interesting. And then he says, I didn't have any vulnerabilities when I wrote that. Now I have 3 days later. So, very interesting. And somebody donated him a PS4 apparently. So, yeah, so why should we take this seriously? Anybody could come forward and say this. Well, apparently this guy is well known in the PS Vita community, and obviously I'm not really involved in that, so I'm not entirely familiar with this guy, but he's a very well known developer as far as I'm aware in the PS Vita community, and he's made a lot of great stuff for like exploits and stuff for that system. So yeah, this is something to be taken seriously for sure. And of course it wasn't on April 1st, so it doesn't look like this is some kind of off-color, out-of-season April Fool's joke. So this was kind of mid-March, now we're into mid-April, and nothing's materialized yet, but I mean, give the guy some time. Also, why 6.20, I hear people ask, instead of 7.02? Well, if you head over to sce.party and you see all the list of jailbreaks, this is a great site to go to. By the way, if you're always wondering, is there a new exploit yet? Instead of asking me, just go on this website and check the PS4 jailbreak status, and then you'll know. It's a pretty good way of keeping up with current exploits and stuff. I'm sure not all the information on this is 100% accurate, but they do a good job. They do the best they can to get the information. So you can see that there's a 6.20 public WebKit exploit, and this came out way back, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. SpectreDev released this WebKit exploit, and you need both in order to jailbreak the system. You need a WebKit exploit and a kernel exploit. You can't really do one without the other. So since the WebKit exploit's already done for him, then it makes sense for the Flow to just jump on 6.20, because then he can get stuck in on working on a kernel exploit, because the WebKit exploit part's already done for him. So it makes sense for him to start on 6.20. Apparently there's also a 6.00 to 6.72 WebKit exploit that was released by Fire30. So maybe he's working on, or I don't know, maybe he just chose the 6.21 because it's maybe a better WebKit exploit, or it's maybe better documented or better set up compared to the one by Fire30. I'm not sure, but that seems to be why he's probably doing 6.20, or at least working on 6.20 to begin with. So it's important to note that he said he's found vulnerabilities 3 days later. It only took him a few days to find vulnerabilities, but just bear in mind that just because he has found vulnerabilities does not mean he's found a jailbreak. You can find vulnerabilities, but you need to be able to exploit them in the right way to get kernel access. You need to be able to read and write to the kernel. So even if you find a vulnerability that lets you read the kernel, if you can't write to the kernel, then you don't have a jailbreak. So take everything with a grain of salt. Don't just assume that he has an exploit all set up and ready to go. Maybe he does, but you know, it's possible that he hasn't, or he's still working on it. So let's just assume, for the sake of speculation, that he does have a jailbreak set up. Why hasn't he released it yet? Well, if he did have a jailbreak set up, the other developers who have been, you know, working on the other exploits in private, they might have contacted him and you know, told him not to release it potentially. Just like, you know, pretty much any developer who's been working on these higher exploits, none of them have, you know, went to actually release anything. We've had that Fire 30 guy, and obviously we have the Flow Zero, and people like Spectre and other developers who have been working on this stuff have kept things private. Supposedly there's a 5.50 to 6.50 exploit here that's fully exploited in private, and then a 6.50 to 7.02 exploit that's partially exploited in private. So again, we don't know how accurate that is. People may say if there's a 5.50 exploit to 6.50 that's already fully exploited, and it's not the same exploit for the 6.50 to 7.02 exploit because it's only partially exploited, then why haven't they released it? Surely there's no reason to keep it private if it's already been patched. They might as well release it. Well, the thing with that is some of the vulnerabilities that are used in this exploit may also be being used in this 6.50 to 7.02 exploit. So whatever Sony patched between 6.50 and 7.02 that made it so that this full exploit no longer works on the 6.50 to 7.02 one, and they only have apparently read access on this exploit. They don't have the ability to write to the kernel to get a full exploit yet. Well, just because one little part of the exploit has been patched doesn't mean that there's not some other vulnerability that they both share. So if this exploit shares the same vulnerability with this exploit, then it still makes sense to keep it private, because if they release this full exploit, then it might patch something in this exploit and make a higher firmware exploit impossible. You know, that might be why that is the case, or this just might not be accurate. So if there are developers out there who have a higher exploit that's not been patched yet for, like, you know, 7.02 or something like that, whether it's the Flow Zero or, you know, the other developers, or you know, Fire 30, why haven't they released it? Why are they keeping it private? But before we get into that, I should say, as I've said before in other videos, that you know, these developers are not under any obligation to give us anything. You know, they don't work for us. We don't pay them their wages. They're doing this out of, you know, just because that's what they enjoy doing. And if they decide that they want to keep it private for whatever reason, they just don't like the community and they want to keep it private, then that is completely up to them, and we have no say in that. And we can't be entitled to expect them to release something. So let's say they are planning to release it at some point, or they're not just keeping it private because they just don't want to release it for the fact that they just don't like the PS4 modding community or something like that. So in that case, there's several rumors going around. One is that they're not releasing it because they're not fans of piracy, and releasing the exploit would cause piracy, and therefore they're keeping it private because they don't like piracy. The second reason is that they're waiting for the PlayStation 5 to launch. I've heard lots of people say that, and now lots of other people are saying that maybe they're going to wait until the end of life of the PS4 before they release it. So let's go through those. So first of all, the whole piracy argument, I don't really buy that. You know, it could be true, but I just don't understand the mentality on that. I've heard some of the devs say, you know, 5.05 is fine. We don't need a higher exploit. There's nothing wrong with 5.05. And yeah, there's no point in releasing a new exploit because 5.05 is perfectly adequate and we don't need anything else. So I would disagree with that based on the fact that 5.05 is getting old now as an exploit. It is harder to get a hold of PS4s that are still on 5.05 or below. especially PS4 Pros. Now, it could be different depending on the country that you're in, but here in the UK, it's very difficult to find a 5.05 PS4 Pro. Even like I've tried, even if you go to certain retailers, you'll buy them. Like you find a bundle and you think you've hit the, you know, the jackpot. You get a bundle, like a Destiny 2 bundle, but then when you order it, and it comes, it turns out they were out of stock, and then they just give you like a brand new PS4 Pro that's on a higher firmware with a separate copy of the game. They do that here a lot. I've been stung by that twice in the past, so, and had to return the consoles. So yeah, it's difficult to get a 5.05 PS4 Pro, and 5.05 PS4s are still relatively okay to get. They're relatively easy to get from places like eBay and third-party sellers, you know, Gumtree, Craigslist, stuff like that. But most of the reason why they're so available on eBay is because a lot of people are selling them because they don't want to have a 5.05 jailbreak anymore because it's just too old and they can't run any of their newer games. Because even if you're not into piracy and you're just wanting to run your legitimate copy games on a 5.05 PS4, you can't. You know, you have to update your disc games. You can't play even your retail store-bought copy discs that you paid legally for. You can't run them in your console without updating it. So they're selling their 5.05 PS4s. So the idea that there's not a need for a higher exploit, I think, is ridiculous. I think that's a terrible argument. There's definitely a need for a higher firmware exploit on the PS4. And then the whole idea that they're not doing it because of piracy really confuses me, because these developers have released exploits before: the 1.76 exploit, the 4.05, the 4.55 exploit. They didn't complain about piracy when they were releasing those exploits, which they knew full well would lead to piracy anyway. And on top of that, pretty much every jailbreak that's ever existed for any console has enabled piracy. It's just part of the course. That's what happens when you exploit the console. And they chose to be involved in console modding and exploiting consoles in the first place. So the idea that they're holding off because they don't like piracy just seems a bit... I don't get that. It doesn't really make any sense. But I could be wrong, of course. But yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm being disrespectful to any of the developers. I mean, if they say that that is the reason why they are not releasing the exploit, it's because of piracy, then we should just take them on face value, and if that's what they're saying, then that's most likely the case, and we should just accept it and move on. But, you know, it's fun to speculate, so we'll go ahead and have a look at some of the other rumors and just see if there could be anything behind any of those other rumors. And then the other thing about waiting for the PS5 to come out. Now, this actually does make some more sense to me, because there is a possibility, however small, it might just be like a 1% chance. So there's still a chance that the PS5 might have the same kind of exploit in the kernel that the PS4 has. The same kind of exploit. Now, that's probably a very small chance that it's going to have the same vulnerability. But even if it is just a tiny chance, it probably is worth just waiting a few more months till the PS5 launches. Because that way, if there is the same exploit in the PS5 as there is in the PS4, then we can basically kill two birds with one stone, and we'll get a new exploit for the PS4 and a PS5 jailbreak at the same time. So you have a new exploit for the PS4 plus a PS5 exploit. That's pretty awesome. Whereas if they release an exploit now before the PS5 comes out, and that exploit will get patched by Sony, obviously, in a new update, a new firmware update, and then they'll incorporate that same patch into the PS5 as well if it uses the same kind of system, then when the PS5 launches, it will be much harder to exploit because it will have incorporated all of the patches from the PS4 into the PS5 WebKit. So it's going to be harder to exploit. So if they just keep, you know, a few exploits private, then when the PS5 launches, they might, you know, have a better chance of exploiting the PS5 when that launches. So that does kind of make sense to me. But, you know, the chances that the PS5 are going to use the same, you know, WebKit and the same kind of system, maybe they will. You know, the operating system looks very similar. It's based on the same architecture as the PS4, you know, x86. So maybe it's a small chance, but it's probably still worth waiting just in case. So I can kind of understand that argument. If they haven't been able to patch the vulnerabilities that are in private right now, and all the PS4 updates that are coming out, we keep getting new firmware updates for the PS4, and assuming that they're not patching those vulnerabilities because they don't know about them, then there is a chance that those same vulnerabilities could slip into the PS5. That actually does make more sense to me, even though it still seems to be a pretty unlikely thing, quite a small chance that the PS5 will have the same vulnerability. You would think that Sony would like completely redesign the WebKit and the security. They would do a complete overhaul on it, but you never know. So yeah, it's worth thinking about. So that is that rumor. The other idea is that they're going to wait until the end of life of PS4. Now I'm not entirely sure what that means. Does that mean they're going to wait until the PS4 is not receiving any more updates, like completely end of life, no updates, Sony drops support for the PS4? If that's what we're talking about, then that seems like an absolutely ridiculous idea that they would wait that long to release an exploit for the PS4, because who the hell is going to care about an exploit on the PS4 that far into the future? It's just, nobody's going to care. The PS6 is probably going to be coming out, and then they drop an exploit for the PS4, like, what, 5 people are going to care about it compared to releasing it now when hundreds of people are going to care and benefit from it. So yeah, that just doesn't make sense to me. However, what they might mean by end of life of PS4 is that they're waiting until there's no more games being made on the PS4, because obviously for the next couple of years there's going to be cross-generation games between the PS5 and the PS4, so there's still going to be new PS4 games being made. If they release an exploit right now, then you're not going to be able to run any of those newer PS4 games on, you know, like 7.02, when the PS4 is still getting games on higher firmware versions that require higher firmware versions. So you're still not going to be able to run certain games. Whereas if they wait until the last PS4 game is made for the PS4 and there's no more PS4 games coming out after that, then they drop the exploit. Then they never have to release a new jailbreak, because you'll always be able to run every PS4 game that's ever existed on the current exploit that gets released. So that also kind of makes sense. Personally, I hope that's not the case, because, or I hope there's at least more than one exploit. Maybe one exploit they can drop when the PS5 launches, and then another one they can drop later on once the last PS4 game's been made. Because if that is the case and they're going to wait until the last PS4 game comes out, then that's going to be a while. That's going to be like several years into the PS5. So like at least 1 or 2 years, I would say, into the PS5 before we actually get this exploit, which would really suck. So fingers crossed that's not the case, and that we'll hopefully see a new exploit come out when the PS5 launches, or around about then, or in a few months' time. That would be great. But again, this is all just speculation. That's just my ideas, what I'm throwing into the mix. That's just my take on it anyway. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Also check out my Ridge wallet link down in the description, because it helps support the channel and you get a great product at the same time. So thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video or found the information useful. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one.